Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, President Buhari inaugurates a Board of Trustees and Governing Council for Ogoni land cleanup, affirms his administration's commitment to restoring the oil-polluted environment. Federal government threatens to withdraw licenses of 2 fertilizer manufacturing companies over alleged economic sabotage and failure to meet local consumption. Nigeria military losing no sleep over reported leadership change in Boko Haram, dismisses it as irrelevant and inconsequential to Northeast operations. And South Africa's ruling African National Congress faces its worst showing in elections since the end of apartheid.
And on business news tonight, MTN Group records its first ever loss following a 330 billion naira regulatory fine.
And on sports news, after initial flight problems, Nigeria's Dream Team 6 arrive in Manaus just few hours before Olympic game opener against Japan.
And from Abuja, Linda Akibe, Appellate Court upholds the election of Mr. Yahaya Bello as Governor of Kogi State, throws out appeal filed by federal lawmaker Honorable James Faleke.
The President has reiterated the commitment of his administration to the cleanup of Ogoni land in Rivers State. President Muhammadu Buhari said this during the inauguration of the Board of Trustees and members of the Governing Council for the cleanup at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. Chukwumana Kusi, our State House correspondent, reports.
Ogoni land, and indeed the Niger Delta region, in spite of the oil revenue that comes from here, have remained a shadow of itself. Over the years, the land has been degraded, aquatic life destroyed, water polluted. Blame it on oil companies that operate in the area and neglect by past administrations. But the Buhari administration says enough of the neglect here. He inaugurates the governing board for the cleanup of Ogoni land following a report by the United Nations 5 years ago.
Distinguished members of the press, trustees.
$1 billion has been set aside to start up the cleanup exercise that will last for more than 2 decades. The President wants the board to ensure accountability and calls on the Niger Delta people to be patient.
In addition to the management and administrative structure, other systems and controls are being put in place to ensure that the funds devoted to this project are used only for the intended purpose.
After their first meeting, Chairman of the board pledges a commitment to the President's charge.
And we're going to be held to the highest standards of accountability, transparency, and even efficiency in handling these funds.
Many Nigerians have sought to know whether the cleanup exercise has started and how the government intends to tackle security while carrying out the exercise.
We have to take a review of what we mean by emergency response, and that I consider is that we have started. So you have to have the software and the hardware for anything to work.
So it's very, very important that the security aspects of this program, as well as, frankly, the community engagement aspect. That's why I like the whole issue of livelihood, as the Minister has repeatedly emphasized, comes to play.
In all, there will be 5 years remediation and 20 years restoration. And the government is optimistic that the Niger Delta youth and local communities will cooperate with the federal government to ensure that there is no recontamination of Ogoni land when it is all said and done. Chukuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
The Minister of Solid Minerals has been explaining the terms of agreement that led to the return of Global Infrastructure Nigeria Limited for the revamping of the Nigerian iron ore mining company, Itape, in Kogi State. Dr. Kayode Fayemi spoke against the backdrop of criticism of the decision by the federal government to invite a company whose contract was terminated by the administration of the late Musa Yar'Adua. However, social entrepreneur Ms. Natasha Akpoti, who has described the agreement as retrogressive, speaking on our breakfast program, Sunrise Daily, she said the Yar'Adua administration had terminated the initial contract as a result of fraud and mismanagement. Meanwhile, the federal government has confirmed that it has begun the process of reforming Ajaokuta Steel Company.
Nigeria had already admitted in the course of this arbitration and mediation that we were liable to pay somewhere in the region of about $500 to $700 million for what Global had put in. That was the calculation. That was something that our own Bureau of Public Enterprises and the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development and a number of other players had committed Nigerians to in the course of that negotiation. Now we're not paying any of that. What we're doing in return is, yes, giving the Nigerian Iron Ore Mining Company back for the remaining period of the concession. It was a 10-year concession. 3 years had been completed before the revocation. Now there is 7 years left of the concession. So all that we've done is allow Global come and complete the concession.
From my own perspective, like many other Nigerians, we would look at this agreement as taking a step forward and 2 steps backwards. So in a way, it's actually a retrogressive agreement. On the bright side, we could say that for once in 8 years, Ajaokuta is free. That means it's off the hostile agreement that it has been entrapped in for the past 8 years by the Indians. That means it now belongs to the federal government, and the federal government can actually invest or seek investors as it wishes so. But on the retrogressive part, I think it's quite distasteful, because this is the same company which late President Yar'Adua actually terminated the concession. So I wonder why Nigeria would actually re-engage them on the same grounds, whereby we have clear proof that there was fraud and mismanagement of resources.
The federal government has threatened to withdraw the licenses of 2 local fertilizer manufacturing companies over their failure to meet local consumption. The 2 companies, Notora Petrochemical and Indorama Eleme Petrochemical, are also accused of alleged economic sabotage. This was confirmed today by the National Security Advisor, Mr. Babagana Mungono. The decision was made as security operatives are said to have arrested a store manager and 5 other employees of an explosives distribution company alleged to be suppliers of some items to militants in the Niger Delta.
The incessant bombings by the Niger Delta militants and Boko Haram militants have caused both economic losses and human lives in the country. This over time has drawn concerns from the local and international community for ways of ending the attacks. But as part of measures to curtail their activities, security operatives have arrested a storekeeper and 5 others alleged to be suppliers of explosives to the Niger Delta militants.
This office has conducted investigations into the incessant bombing of oil facilities in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria and discovered that commercial explosives and accessories were used for these attacks. The actors, including the storeman of a major explosives company, distribution company in Nigeria, as well as an accomplice, and 5 security operatives, have been arrested and handed over to the appropriate authorities.
That is not all. The National Security Advisor gave a stern warning to 2 fertilizer manufacturers for alleged sabotage of government efforts in attaining food security in the country.
The Office of the National Security Advisor has observed with total dismay and disappointment some unpatriotic acts and abuse of the goodwill of the federal government of Nigeria. Reports of the activities of these 2 companies have indicated that about 71% of the 2.05 million metric tons cumulative annual production exported to the detriment of our national economy. This has resulted in a spike in the price of urea-based fertilizers in Nigeria, with obvious implications on food security in the country.
The warnings from the National Security Advisor is very clear. It says the federal government will not compromise in the provision of adequate security for its people.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, has ordered the immediate sealing off of Mrs. Nigeria Development and Construction Company, an importer and seller of explosives in Koko area in Delta State. The company has been accused of illegally diverting some explosives. This is in addition to the blacklisting of the company and withdrawal of its explosive licenses. The development is sequel to investigations by the Office of the National Security Advisor, which revealed that the company was involved in the diversion of about 9,000 kilograms of nitroglycerin explosives and 16,420 pieces of electrical detonators between 2015 and 2016. More ground troops are being deployed to Ikorodu, Arakpo and other neighboring communities where the Nigerian Armed Forces recently recorded successes against pipeline vandals. During a tour of the areas, the acting Inspector General of Police and the flag officer commanding the Western Naval Unit, promised to sustain the momentum against the saboteurs.
After the area bombardment of targeted hotspots of oil pipeline vandals, the influx of uniformed personnel to the surrounding communities has been on the increase. While the residents are hoping for a safer environment, the presence of the Inspector General of Police in the area may have brought some light to their plight.
As head of the Nigerian Police Force, it's incumbent on us to support our officers. And I believe that our coming here is going to encourage them to boost their morale so that they can do more than what they are doing now. And, as you said, I have been here and I have so much from yesterday to today. And we are trying to see that obviously it's our responsibility to assist them in the operation they are doing, especially in the areas of deployments of our marine police here, which we are going to do. Two is that obviously to sort of encourage the local community to support what we are doing here as security agencies.
And this community leader is glad he came.
What we want is adequate peace. We want peace to reign. We don't want any alcohol. We don't want any problem. So once more, we say thank you, sir.
The visit coincides with the ground tour of some of the areas, including Ishawo, Arekbo, and Ibafo, by men of the Nigerian Navy and other security forces.
Simply for respect, the red patches is...
They are continuing with mapping out of strategies to ensure the vandals no longer remain at ease. And this resident seems satisfied.
We have relative peace in this environment, and those who ran away, some of the landlords, the tenants that ran away from this environment, they have started returning gradually, and there is peace now. Shops are open, churches are opened, schools are going on with their summer school and so on and so forth. So there is peace now.
While summarizing the assessment tour, the flag officer commanding Western Naval Command assures the continuation of this operation and sustenance of the gains.
Essentially, I want to believe that you also have seen the magnitude of activities of these pipeline vandals across all these places we have gone. There are evidence that they have had a field day, and I believe that it is time for us to just put a total stop to all this nonsense. The economy of this country belongs to all of us, and some few individuals should not hold us to ransom.
As this operation to dislodge these economic saboteurs intensifies, whatever would keep the morals of the troops alive must be accorded them in order to insulate them from dining with the devil. Chris Illems, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, Nigerian Guild of Editors advocates agriculture as key to rescuing the nation's economy. We'll have more in a moment. Please join us again.